Hello and welcome back to Staked Podcast. Today I have a tremendous honor of interviewing the legendary Raoul Pal. This is a man who needs no introduction, but as a formality, Raoul Pal is an investor and entrepreneur. He graduated from the University of Plymouth, where he studied economics and politics. He began his career in finance in 1990, eventually landing at Goldman Sachs, where he became head of European hedge fund sales for equities and equity derivatives. Raoul moved on to become a portfolio manager at GLG Global Macro. In 2005, Raoul pseudo-retired and became an entrepreneur. He launched Global Macro Investor that year, one of the world's preeminent macroeconomic and investment strategy research services. In 2014, Raoul launched Real Vision, a disruptive financial knowledge platform with the goal of democratizing access to finance and some of the leading minds in the industry. Most recently, Raoul launched the Exponential Age Asset Management, a fund of funds focusing on the digital asset space. So without further ado, it is my tremendous pleasure to introduce Raoul Pal.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well, Raoul. Thank you for coming on Stake Podcast.
It's an honor to be here.
For some context for the listeners, I want to start out by explaining how this interview came to be. I reached
Which
out
I love.
to you.
This is such a great story. This is why it's an honor to speak to you because of you.
Thank you. I'm a huge fan, and you've had a tremendous impact on my thinking, and so it's kind of come like full circle for me to be able to do this. But I reached out to you on Twitter after I saw you post about a piece of art that you purchased by one of our favorite NFT artists, XCopy. This was a 1 of 10 titled "The Last Selfie." I tweeted at you with a link to a YouTube video of me buying that same piece of art in 2018 and recorded it, uploaded it to my YouTube channel, and asked you to come on my channel and let me interview you, and you agreed. My first question for you comes from @Bernasso on Twitter, who saw that interaction and later requested I ask you, what was your main reason for being willing to conduct this interview with me?
Because I wanted to hear from you what you saw in that piece of art. What made you, because it was early in NFT, so I just want to hear your story. I was so intrigued by it because it's become one of the most famous pieces of art in all of crypto space. So tell me the story. I think everybody wants to hear your story of the last selfie. And why? What were you doing at the time? To give us the whole context. So I'm interviewing you at this point.
Okay, I'm happy to. Yes, for the full context, it was 2018. I was in university. Took me 8 years to graduate, and so I was living with my parents, and I was working at FedEx at the time, and I had fallen down the crypto rabbit hole in 2017. Didn't come out of it, and so I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna go and use this stuff. And I had come across an artist and an entrepreneur, Margaret. I actually can't remember her last name, but she was the founder of Blockade Games, and she was an artist and an entrepreneur and really in the gaming industry. And she had launched a game, and XCopy had done some artwork for the game. And so that was how I found him. And I was like, okay, like I like art. I didn't have like a bunch of money to go buy fine art, but here was this new, medium of art. And I kind of understood, Bitcoin and digital scarcity. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to find artists that I like and that I can afford to buy.
Hold on. Nobody knew about NFTs at this point. So you were like crazy early experimenting with stuff that nobody knew what they were. You could have a picture on chain. I mean, when did XCopy mint his first work? 2017, 2018, 2017 maybe. So it's like there was very few people around in the space. So what makes you think, oh, I'm going to go and buy NFTs, which nobody really knew what they were. They had not become mainstream. This is what I'm interested in.
Yes, I s- I've always been interested in technology and social media. And so for me, it was like a very natural thing, I guess, like playing video games. I understood like digital items. And to me, it was really just about exploring the technology. I had started fancying myself an amateur investor and believed that, okay, you should only invest in things that you like, use, and understand. And in trying to experiment with DeFi, so at that same time, I was, using DeFi protocols such as YFI, Yearn Finance.
And that was early as well. I mean,
Yes.
2018 was not DeFi time. It was early geeks testing it out.
And I was trying to figure it out. I'm not like a computer science guy, so like a lot of this was me just I was like, okay, I'll just use it and try and figure it out. And so in that video where I bought the last selfie, I didn't even understand in buying that okay, I'm gonna have to wait for this transaction to go through. And so I was literally that was it. That was my first time trying to buy an NFT was that video.
But why did you choose that? How many NFTs were there at the time? There couldn't have been a huge amount of choice. And
No,
what appealed to you about that piece of work that you think, I'm going to try this?
it was the style. It was the style of the art. Like when I looked at it, it to me spoke to me as being it represented like to me it was digital. It was digital native and like glitchy art and this guy taking a selfie. I was like, okay, this is like very cyberpunk in a way it felt. Which was like the ethos that I was like falling down that rabbit hole. And I could afford it. That was like one of the main things because there was on Known Origin there was a number of artists. There was like maybe like 5 or 6 at this time, but his piece, because as I recall, he had it listed for a certain amount, and it wasn't selling for that amount. And then he did like a sale, and I somehow stumbled across the piece whenever he had the pieces on sale, and he had posted, he was like, I'm taking half price offers on the last 4 of these. And I was like, okay, like perfect.
What did you pay for it?
Including gas fees, $20.
And I paid $1 million. I mean, you
What
wish
was
you'd
it?
held on. You wish you'd held on to yours.
I can't say yes, I wish I held on to it, and I'll tell you why. It was 2021, and I think at this time, XCopy had really started getting some notoriety. Obviously, we're in a bull market, and I don't remember exactly how this all went, but I remember he DM'd me on Twitter, and he said like, "Hey, you should consider like selling this piece because like a lot of people are interested in my art right now." And my response to him was, "I'm never selling this." And he was like, "Hey, like completely respect that. Do what you want, it's yours. But if you do decide to list it, make sure you list it on OpenSea or Known Origin." And I was like, okay. And I started thinking about it. And I was in law school at the time. And I asked myself, I said, okay, what amount of money would I be happy to sell this for? And so I thought about it and I said to myself, $500,000. And I was like, no one's going to buy it for $500,000. And so I listed it. I listed it for 150 ETH and it sold within a week. And
I mean, good
I
on you. Amazing. I mean, that's a hell of a trade. $20 to $500,000 for a student. I mean, killer.
And I knew that was life-changing money for me. And I knew after it happened that I can't be upset because I'll likely never be able to do that again in my entire career. Hopefully I can, but it changed my life. XCopy changed my life. He helped me in a time that I really needed it, financially, and then
Have you told
I
him this?
I have. I've on DM, and I tried to get him to come and do this interview with us, but I think he's very camera shy.
Yeah.
But I have told him that he changed my life.
And
A-
he's a good guy, and yeah, it's just what I mean. What an amazing story.
And I feel honored to be part of his history because that video has continued to resurface at different times on Twitter and in blogs. And as he's grown in notoriety, I feel like I've become part of that story
The
of
story,
his
yeah,
rise.
the mythology of XCopy.
Yes.
Because yeah, if anything, because he was so early, he really was a man of the people, and his art was for the people, by the people. It's very English, but it's it's not aloof. It's like streets, you know. It's like and it and that story to then to the story of you is just so perfect for XCopy. It's just brilliant.
I feel the same way. I feel like for as long as his work will pervade, and I do agree with the things you've said about him being a, sort of a Basquiat of our era, if you will. As he grows, that video will grow on the internet with him. And I feel, like as he's changed my life, I'll always be appreciative of what he did. And I think it's cool that like he was just, I don't know what his art background was before that. I truly don't, but it seemed like he was just like me, just a normal person trying to try something new.
Yeah, he is, and he was early, and he was a pioneer, testing stuff on Tumblr endlessly, just putting his art out there and seeing whether people liked it or he liked it. And then eventually he develops a style that becomes, and it's changed over time as well, right? It's not like he's had the same style. He's changed it, but it has the DNA of him through it. But as you said, it's like if you're in the US, it'll be Basquiat. If you're in the UK, it's more like Banksy. It's somewhere like Banksy, Damien Hirst. You know, there's the English part of it is very English. The titles are the most English thing in the world, which makes them fun. But they kind of like, yeah, they've got that Basquiat element to it as well. Just cool.
Well, I want to start by talking to you about XCopy. I kind of want to start narrow and then go broad into NFTs if you will allow. And I
Yeah.
have a bunch of questions for you, but I know I only have an hour of your time. And so I will try to move through these efficiently. What attracted you to the world of crypto art, and how did you first discover XCopy? What was your aha moment?
I got into digital art late. So I probably started seeing it around 2020 from people on Twitter that I followed, interesting things. You know, you'd see crypto punks, you'd see Beeple, you'd see some of XCopy's work being shared around. I can't remember when Beeple's sale was, 2020, I think, back end of 2020, the $69 million thing. And that made me think, what the fuck is this about? I kind of understood it, you know, digital scarcity and art. I didn't know who the artists were. I didn't know much about it. Um, and a colleague I used to work with made an NFT, an image of me, um, gave it to me, and that was my first NFT. Then he started another one called he's German, so Waffen mit Waffen, apes with guns, and it was like this ape with a gun. And I'm like, well, that's all humans are, apes with guns. So I had a couple of NFTs, and I'm trying to think of my next one that I bought after that. I'm flipping through my NFT collection now. I probably might have bought the Damien Hirst, the the currency, because I knew of Damien Hirst, and then I started buying bits and pieces. And as soon as XCopy had released, because I was now aware of XCopy, I'd met Cosmo de Medici. He became a friend. And I was like, okay, this is a whole world of, I can't afford any of this stuff because it was crazy expensive. But I got in with Max Payne and Friends, and I just loved the art. I just thought it's just cool as shit. And I wanted Max Payne. And then as soon as it's sitting in my wallet and on my OpenSea winking at me, I'm like, yeah, I want more XCopy because I just love the style. So that was my start in the digital art world. And then it kind of broadened out from there. And this year I just hit the hyperdrive.
You started buying during a harsh NFT bear market. While it feels like the first signs of sentiment shift towards positivity are happening now. Back in 2023 and early 2024, it was a bold move on your part. What was the logic behind all of the crypto art acquisitions you made?
So I had started collecting a little bit more art, bits and pieces. I started seeing things like Rupa Renisto, which I really liked, and other bits and pieces. I started collecting stuff in small, and then it was beginning of this year. So I probably had maybe 20 NFTs, 30 NFTs, something like that, of different stuff. But I got invited by Cosmo to an event at Beeple Studio, and everybody of all of the artists that you kind of know, except XCopy, were all there. All of the pop artists, plus Sotheby's, Christie's, some collectors, stuff like that. And I made a macro presentation to them all about what drives NFT prices. And I said, NFT prices are all driven by the business cycle and the macro work that I do, of which they never believed. They were all thinking as artists, nobody likes my art. Nobody wants to pay anything for it. Sales have gone down. Values in ETH terms have gone down. ETH's gone down. I'm terrible. That's the view of an artist. I'm like, no. This is what happens to fine wines. This is what happens to watches. This is what happens to the NASDAQ. It's all part of the same trade. So don't feel bad about your art. We're now at the bottom of the bear market. And this is how it's supposed to feel. And my favorite trade to take in crypto is the second cycle trade. So it comes the first cycle, has a blow off, everyone's super interested, and then it collapses. So NFTs collapsed and most of them went to zero. But the ones didn't, that retain value, they're like, okay, well, these are the ones you need to look at. And they were going to be XCopy, Beeple, Punks, Fidenzas, Ringers, stuff like that. And I could see, and all of those people were there, apart from XCopy. And so I really started digging in, and I just built a thesis that really simply is we've got a gift of an opportunity if one thing is right. If this space, crypto, goes from $3 trillion, back then it was $2 trillion, or $1.5, I said it's going to $100 trillion in 10 years. This is the fastest accumulation of wealth in all recorded history. And you're creating two things: massive wealth, and also culture, the culture of the internet. And the culture of the internet will live in all of our minds. You will always remember 2020 and 2021, always. And it will become legend. And the richer people get from this whole space, the more they want remnants or encapsulated memories of what really happened. And so I realized that thesis was good. So I called up some friends of mine who were from the hedge fund world, who were multi-billionaires and were massive art collectors. And I said, how does it work? Who buys this stuff? And it's the same thing, is once people get rich, after they've bought a few houses, they end up buying art. There's nothing else to buy. But the reason why Warhol is so expensive is because for the baby boomer generation, which is massive, the largest cohort in history, that Warhol is everything from Marilyn Monroe to the Rolling Stones to the Beatles to Bob Dylan to Studio 54. It's the 60s, 70s, and very early 80s, all encapsulated in a piece of art. So you want it because that's their youth. That's the golden time. The great stories. They make films about every single part of that period. And this is the same thing. And so I split the art world into two. which was generative artists, which is art history style of art. Great. Not necessarily my favorite. Some of it I really do like. But cultural art, that's the Basquiat, that's the Hearst, that's the Banksy, that's the Warhol, that's the Rembrandt, that's the Matisse, that's all of that. So I'm like, there are only two artists that were OGs from day one. And when I've got to know Mike Beeple pretty well, and he's like, every time I talk to him, he was like, yeah, well, I was talking to XCopy, and he was like, well, you should put stuff on chain. So I'm like, so he's the OG? They're like, yeah. And so I'm like, okay, it's obvious to me because I like the art and I want a long-term savings vehicle that I can have for 10, 20 years. And I have a macro thesis. It's like, I'm going to do this. So I bought a lot of XCopy, bought a lot of Beeple, and then I've just bought, I obviously love both of those artists, but I've also just bought art that I like, of artists that appeal to me. I'll show you later. We'll be able to share the screen. I'll show you my my vault.
Okay, I would love that. In
well, we can do that now if you want.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Let me see if we can share the screen. Window.
Yeah, I'll make sure that they can see it too.
Okay.
Okay, so I need to. Here we go.
Okay. So it's called the Culture Vault because you now understand why. Because I'm trying to take a capsule of culture. So, and this is not all of them, but this is just the featured selection to make it easier to look at. So the Beeples, obviously, politics is bullshit. Is extremely sought after and a very early piece. I actually think Giga Chad is going to be the single most valuable piece of art that Beeple has ever made.
That one and the Murad one are two of my favorites.
Yeah. The reason being is Elon looks like he dies for something, is going to be one of the historically most important people in all history.
Yeah, so I completely agree.
Love that. But I love all of the Beeple stuff. And Beeple stuff is also summer 2020, 2021, right? We all know what we were doing. We were locked down. We were at home. We were buying stupid art. We were trading. We were all of the stuff, all of the emotion, everything. That's that collection. So love that. Then it's the XCopies. So Last Selfie, Mortal, which I'm very proud of as well. And then a whole bunch. And the very Englishness of the fuck you looking at, that's some aggressive guy in a pub. And then just how they all fit together and how they all look and the evolution of the art. So I've got a lot of XCopy.
His style, everyone has just tried to like emulate it, but even when they do, it still just doesn't have the same effect, in my opinion. You can tell, I can tell whenever I look, like the difference between his work and a derivative artist, essentially.
Yeah, and then you can see him branching out into these kind of warped versions of what he was doing before. There's, like, he calls them remnants, but these are the damage control versions. There's like, you can see a bit of the past and a bit of the future. So that's my XCopy stuff. I think I've got 40 something pieces. Rup Brenisto, he's got this weird take, again AI generated, of what look like ordinary photos from the 1960s or 70s, but when you look at them, they're all warped and they're all wrong and they're all weird. And it's like this warped version of the American dream that looks a bit like a film like The Man Who Fell to Earth. And he's got many of these. I mean, they're just weirdness based around like a warped version of the American dream. So I love his work. So I've collected a decent amount of that. Then art that matters to me, ACK, another great artist. Winds of Yawanawa people know about. Louis Ponce, I just like the originality. Pindar Van Arman, experimenting with AI, doing really cool stuff. Fuck Render's a friend of mine, big leader in the space. Jack Butcher, Damien Hirst. Then we've got Neurocolor, Squiggles, more ATKs. These amazing Kim Assendorfs, which are an artist I've recently discovered. Is just his work is ridiculous, amazing stuff. And then I bought the Joe P's recently, which are super interesting original pieces. Is it not going to play? So that's that, and then my punks and apes and all of that stuff. So I'll stop sharing. So there you go.
Let me get you back on the screen. And okay, so how do you go about finding artists, and is your way of picking more quantitatively driven or qualitatively driven?
It's just if I like it. It's just if I think it's cool. And I have a particular aesthetic, and so it's just something that hits my aesthetic. Can't really describe it. I don't. That's why I don't have a lot of like Fidenzas and stuff like that. It doesn't hit my aesthetic. It doesn't give me any feeling. While things like Life in West America by Rupert Renisto, it's like, okay, this is my culture of David Bowie, 60s films, art house movies, Hunter S. Thompson, all rolled into something. And so it's all that. It's like, does it make me feel something that's relatable to me?
Were you like artistic in your I actually know the answer is you are a creator. So, and as a child, were you interested in, creative works, music, painting,
I've
anything
always
like that?
been a music fanatic my whole life. I can't create music. I'm terrible. I can't play guitar, can't play piano, can't do anything, can't sing. But I've been a music fanatic my whole life. I used to paint when I was a kid, but I never really took it anywhere. I've always appreciated music, architecture, nature, some art. I was never really a big, traditional art person, but I liked art film, art photography. I collect rock and roll photographs. Again, snapshots of culture, signed, so authenticated, scarce moments of culture. I like that. So yes, art has always been part of what I do. The art of life is one of them as well. But yes, I was never like, I get a bit bored in museums, to be honest, or art galleries. I walk around and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't really do it for me. It has to really hit me, and it has to come with something culturally relevant or a reason for that art to hit me. So like Banksy, I loved the moment I saw him because I was London. I lived in London. He was from Bristol, but he was part of the music that came out of Bristol in the early 90s, and his art went along with it. It came out of graffiti art. It was the street. It's what I saw. And so, yes, in that respect. And I also have written my whole life. So I write. So creative. I write even financial stuff creatively. I enjoy that creative process.
Earlier in our interview, you were talking about as you think about artists that you like, you often associate it with music. And personally, one thing I've been looking at and thinking about a lot is NFT music. And I've heard you talk about NFT music as well. And so I'm interested to hear if you have started collecting any, NFT music, using Audius on Solana, or Snoop Dogg, I believe, has released some music on Ethereum as well. Are you interested in music investing as well?
I'm interested in the concept, But having gone down, built a whole business called Science Magic Studios, which we closed around one of the ideas was tokenizing the music industry, because it is a screwed up industry where 80% of the economics are taken by middlemen, from the ticketing to the management to the IP rights to the publishing rights to all of this stuff. It's obvious that it should go towards some sort of digital scarcity, because we've lost it because of Spotify, where it's just digital abundance, same as art did. The issue is, I went really deep down this rabbit hole with some very, very, very famous people, and like nobody can actually wrestle the IP rights, the rights. They don't have any of this stuff, and it's so complicated. Even the record labels don't own it. Nobody does. It's like so many slices of the pie, all bound by legal contracts. It's virtually impossible. So I kind of gave up, and I know that RAC and Justin Blau and a bunch of these guys have been building Audius and other stuff. These are all music people that have really influenced me in this. And I think it will work, but we don't understand it yet. We need something scarce that becomes bigger, but it's difficult. It was like, don't forget, when you were looking at OpenSea in 2018, it's like, well, OpenSea was very new and stuff was very new. You couldn't discover stuff. But eventually we'll find some way of finding more of this stuff. So I do believe it's coming. I'm actually a bigger fan of the idea of album cover art. So I've got a Taschen book of album cover art. And you might know this because you're too young, but my whole life I would have, whether it was a CD or a record, and you would listen to the music and you would read the art and you'd stare at the picture. And that Taschen book showed you that everybody from Damien Hirst to Gilbert and George to you name it make art for album covers, and they got paid once by they get paid whatever commission, $100,000, let's say. Thing that there's no real IP fights over, because Spotify doesn't really care. It's just an image now. But what happens if Taylor Swift released 100,000 tees of a unique version of the album cover that came with rights to concert ticket seats or whatever it is? Now suddenly the artist can be paid royalties. The musician makes another stream of revenues, because now their only revenue is touring or merchandise, because they make no money from Spotify. So you introduce a whole new revenue stream into the equation. You give something to the collectors, something amazing. It could come with music, as you talked about. The NFT of music could come with the album cover art. So you buy the album cover art, you get 3 extra special tracks, and you get rights to tickets and merch at a discount. Well, some of those things will become immensely valuable over time, much like concert tickets. So anyway, that's where my head is at with music and NFTs.
You've mentioned that you believe long-term culturally important crypto art may outperform large cap crypto assets. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, people forget this. Everyone's buying meme coins. They go up a lot and down a lot, as we know. People don't know how much money people made out of NFTs. And the reason being is really simple. They're priced, or the ones that we are mainly, the important ones, are priced in ETH. So when ETH went up from $100 last cycle to $4,000, it went up 40x. The price of crypto punks. Have I frozen? Did I freeze them?
A little, but you're back.
The price of crypto punks went from like $2 2 ETH to 100 ETH. So the price of 100 ETH and ETH going up 40x made ridiculous amounts of money. So how do I think about this? So let's say I buy something for 10 ETH. Well, when I started buying the art in 2024, the price I was paying 10 ETH, let's say, for something when ETH was at 1800. ETH's at 3,000 today. That NFT is now 20 ETH because people have started realizing it, because I kicked off a bull market by talking about this stuff. So it's doubled in ETH terms, and ETH is almost tripled. So I've made 6 times my money. Now, you compound that over 10 years, 15 years, if we're thinking of the long-term appreciation of art in terms of value, okay, that can be very, very significant indeed. So it outperforms ETH is the point.
What are your thoughts on the dynamics of new collectors in the blockchain space? Some artists, including XCopy, have thousands of collectors in a few years. In the traditional art world, this is unprecedented. Are we witnessing the dawn of a completely new era of art collecting?
Too early to tell. I think 2021 was a mania. So we don't know whether we're going to get back to those same levels. If we look at volumes now, they've gone down, but values are rising. My guess is we will set all-time record high prices for art. My guess is the Salvador Mundi Da Vinci piece that sold for $450 million will be broken by a piece of digital art eventually. So because of the wealth. So look who bought the Salvador Mundi, the leader of Saudi Arabia. Right, the richest man in the world buys the most expensive painting ever sold. But we're going to make a lot of very, very, very rich people in this space, and they're going to compete for this stuff. And it's social signaling, it's long-term savings, it's, all of those things. So I think we will see preposterously higher prices over time.
In an interview you did, you talked about the Damien Hirst piece where you could buy the art or you could buy the NFT, but you had to choose. And 50% of people chose the physical piece and 50% chose the NFT. In the future, do you imagine that number changes and maybe even digital art trades at a premium?
Let's see what happens this cycle. So as far as I'm aware, the physicals have been trading at a premium. My guess at the end of this cycle, the physicals will trade at a discount to the NFTs. But this is the very clever experiment Damien did. It's really clever. So we don't know yet. I'm guessing. For example, I get hit up every few days by a Beeple collector who said, "Hey, do you want the physical?" I'm like, why are they all selling the physical? Because, and I said, have you taken it out of the box? No. So it's been sitting on your shelf for 3 years or 4 years. You've never been able to look at it. You've never been able to touch it. You have no value from it apart from hoping it appreciates. They're like, yeah. So I'll try and sell it. I'm like, fascinating. And so it makes me think that the physical is less valuable than the digital over time.
I agree. And I've been thinking about this in terms of one of my friends, Not So Fast, he talked about it in terms of trading cards. I collected Pokemon cards growing up. And now my Pokemon cards are somewhere in a warehouse garage in Oklahoma. But if I had them digitally, I would just be able to bring my computer with me and my Pokemon cards are with me everywhere I go. And I think that to me, it's easier to pass it down. And in this world where metaverses and people are wearing headsets and meeting up in virtual reality and augmented reality, I see those things, it sounds crazy to people, but it's I can see that maybe they will trade at a premium to the physical things because they're easier to store and transfer and all the things we love about Bitcoin.
Everybody's missing another thing. And I've spoken to a lot of the well-known artists about it. Everybody's missing holograms. I was there at Coachella when Tupac's hologram was there. I was physically in the crowd. Currently, again, nobody in America realizes it. ABBA, which is one of the biggest bands in all of history, have basically been on tour in the UK via hologram. So hologram art means that you can have 3D multi-dimensional art without goggles. That technology exists. Sure, maybe for a museum first or whatever it is, but that exists. So when you look at some work like people like Kim Assendorf, I was privileged enough to see some of his work that's about to be released. It's very 3D depth, breadth. It's like, I can't really describe it. It's like going into the void of the internet. Now that should be a 3D experience, and it's probably better in hologram than it is with goggles, because a hologram really is connecting the digital space with the physical space. The goggles are connecting a representation of a physical space. So there's something there. So I think holograms are the things that slept on as the technology for art.
Okay. Duly noted. I will remember that. Some alpha here on Steak Podcast. Yeah, when you were talking about that, it made me think of the Travis Scott concert that he threw in Fortnite, and it was like, I think it was in the height of COVID too, and so like he's doing
Yeah.
this, Fortnite concert, and it's like, okay, like there's clearly a market. The younger generation, it's going to be, well, of course we're going to Travis Scott's, hologram concert. Like yeah.
Yeah.
Time is moving so quickly. So I'm going to skip, and I want to talk about NFTs just a little bit more generally. What are your thoughts on ordinals?
Great idea. I just haven't had time. So I just have not gone down the rabbit hole. I think it's a really interesting way of doing it. I think the Bitcoin blockchain is a very interesting place for art. We have to see. I think that's how I do it. I'm not the early experimenter in a lot of this kind of stuff. I see it. It's clearly interesting. Or does inertia mean that ETH remains the place for high-end art? Don't know.
NFTs make culture an investment, and I think I remember you on, it was either What Shift Happens or Diary of a CEO. You were talking about meme coins as well, being tokenized cultural communities. When you think about the potential size of the market of culture, how big is it?
So if we want to think about culture, the biggest cultural industries in the world, music, okay, that's gigantic. That's the addressable audience of everybody on earth. Sports, about the same. With soccer being the largest sport in the world. I don't know how many people watch soccer. It's like 6 billion. It's crazy. Then we've got...
Have you thought about esports in that too?
Yeah, probably. They're huge as well, massive. But just sports in general. And then we've got entertainments like music, television, stuff like that, and film. And then we've got music, sports, entertainment. It's most of them there. And then there's religion is the other big culture that is massive in terms of addressable audience. So these are very big cultural things. Politics are actually another big cultural community as well. Some have been, these have been digitized. Religion hasn't, politics haven't. But sports, I mean, people talk about Manchester United all day on Twitter and different platforms. So that has. So it really is everybody. And that's really what Web 2 enabled. But somewhere between television and Web 2 and radio and all of the things, they were all doing this. But Web 3 changes the whole dynamic of it in who can own it, how close the fan gets to the creator, whether it's the sports team or whether it is, and whether you can create economies around these things where people can earn money and invest. Let's say you discovered Coldplay because you heard them playing at your university and you thought, well, they're going to be massive. I love this. And there was a Coldplay token that you could get. maybe you'd say, you know what, I might buy some of those because what happens if Coldplay are massive? Or tokens, maybe less so, but maybe it's NFTs of album cover art or whatever. And then one day, like you did with the XCopy, you get it right.
It's also like proving, right? Because everyone, like when an artist blows up, everyone always wants to be like, oh, I knew him back when he was on SoundCloud, right? But if you have
Exactly.
the NFT, it's like, oh no, I have proof now.
And I'm a big fan of the idea that concert tickets and tickets to events need to be NFTs because I've got a drawer full of tickets of every concert I've ever been to. I also have the ticket for Live Aid, which was one of the single most famous concerts in all history. Woodstock and Live Aid are probably the most two. I was there. I've got the program hanging up. That if I had the NFT, I could connect with all the other Live Aid people who were there, who shared that collective memory. We're all
Yes.
roughly the same age. What could we do together? How could we resurrect that? What could we change? Could we create tours from the bands that were at Live Aid? There is so much there if you turn it into Web3. Right now, it's a dead ticket on the wall that I look at and go, I was there.
What advice do you have for creators and artists trying to get into the NFT space? You know, young people, even not young, just people who are artists and want to get involved. And then also, what advice do you have for retail people who want to get involved or want to buy NFTs? What would you say to these people?
To the starters, you're asking the wrong person.
Hmm.
I don't know. Go and ask other artists.
Okay.
I don't know. It's incredibly difficult, right? It's incredibly difficult starting a podcast and gaining an audience. It's incredibly difficult. In a world of digital abundance, creating scarcity and attention is very hard. So it's super hard. Same with music. Think of all the millions of people on SoundCloud. How many of them actually have sold a single thing? 1%? So it's hard. But yeah, if you like art, making art, then continue to make art and get better in your practice and get feedback from others. But don't think about selling it necessarily. If you can, you can. I mean, XCopy was selling his stuff for nothing because nobody knew the form, the medium, whether it was valuable. So just keep going. You know, if you're an artist, don't think about the money, just think about the art. If you're a collector, don't think about the money, just think about the art.
I love that.
Buy shit you like, but also look at what other people are collecting. If you're trying to invest, look what other people are collecting, who people are talking about, serious people, and then say, okay, do I like this style of art? Is this something I understand? Is it in my price range? And then you can start saying, well, there's somebody else who's kind of similar that I can find, that I've found them on Super Rare and they're a young artist. Great. But I know everybody says it flippantly, buy stuff that you like. It's because it's not an investment game really until it gets more expensive, and you know. If not, it's a crapshoot. So don't buy stuff because you think it's going up. Buy stuff because you think it's cool, like you did with XCopy. I mean, you're the exact example of either genius or luck. I have no idea, but we'll take genius.
Definitely luck. Definitely luck.
But you know it's just buy shit you like. Why did you buy it? You liked it, thought it was cool, it resonated with you. That's it.
Yeah.
It's fine. I mean, I've got plenty of art that I have no idea if it's going to go up in value or not, and I don't care. I've just bought it because I think it's cool. I'd like it on the wall once I can figure out how to display it properly.
You just mentioned in answering that question how difficult it is to get scarcity and attention. And I've heard you talking recently a lot that you've been thinking about what is scarcity and this question of like trying to answer this question. And it seems to be motivating part of your NFT thesis. And I've thought about this question myself. And I'm wondering if you have any other things that you've identified to answer this question of like, what is actually scarce?
I think it's attention is upstream of everything. I think everything we do, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with your partner, your relationship at work, everything you do, I think, is attention. I think attention is the currency of humanity. So then, if you get attention and no scarcity, you get a lot of volume. Taylor Swift on Spotify. If you get massive attention and scarcity, you get Andy Warhol. So scarcity plus attention equals value. That's what it is.
We don't have much time left, and as I still have 20 questions listed I could ask you, but I'm going to move on to ask you questions about your daily habits and rituals as one of the most successful investors and entrepreneurs of my era. And a lot of the people who subscribe to my channel, they are not just here for crypto and digital assets. Some of them are here for fitness and lifestyle and military things. And so I'd like to be able to ask you some questions about the way you've chosen to live life and your practices of your life. A quote that I heard you say is, "The game is not money. The game is quality of life." What are some non-financial ways to improve one's quality of life? I think another quote is, "The game is life itself and how you live it."
Experiences are everything. Your house is just an experience. You can live in any building, keeps you dry, warm, whatever. Your house is an experience, but experience is the single most important thing. If you can walk away and say, you know what, I spent 2 weeks in the Amazon rainforest and it was miserable. I got bitten by fire ants and I did this and that, and you come out, you've got an experience that will last you a lifetime. That experience of you buying and selling that XCopy was not just about the money. It was the experience that will live with you forever. So quality of life is a collection of experiences. And that may be your entrepreneur journey or your business journey as well. And there are experiences. You want to get the scarce experiences. In your career, it's the success. It's like, do the thing that's going to count for you. Don't do the thing that's just a cog in the wheel. Do something that's going to give you an experience that might elevate your career. In terms of lifestyle, it's like where you live and how you live. I left finance. I was living in London and I moved to Spain. Cost of living was a third of the price of London. I swapped a 3-bedroom apartment in London, a nice area, for a house on 10 acres in Spain, 10 minutes from the beach in the middle of a national park, where I grew all my own fruit and vegetables, had olive groves and almond groves and orange groves, and the weather was perfect. That arbitrage was amazing. And so it's about the quality of life that you want. Now, you might say, well, I want to live on the beach. And then you start thinking, well, if I want to live on the beach in, a nice town, it's going to cost me a fortune. Yeah, but you know what? There's plenty of places where a nice shack on a beach, on a great beach, costs very little. And if you buy that, then you've achieved the same goal. Might not be the big house, but it still has all the elements. The sun shines, the surf comes in, the tide goes in, the tide goes out, the sun comes up, sun goes down. It's the same. So there's a lot of ways of hacking the same thing. You need to break it down to what is the essential thing. Some people might say, I like to live in the mountains. Other people I like a tropical beach, or I like whatever it is. I like to be in the forest. Well, you can solve that by having a huge house in the forest, some big compound. Well, you can have a hut that you go and find solitude in the forest and go hiking from and have an open fire. So, or you could be in an RV, but you only go to these big empty places. So experience, travel, and how you live your life and where. So many people live just because their friends live there, or because they grew up somewhere near there, or because their job happens to be there, and they end up in some random town they don't really care about. They make some okay friends, but then they get married, their kids go to school, and they're just living. But they're not living life. They're just going through the motions.
Aside from a home, what are some of the lifestyle bank assets?
Well, experience. Travel is the greatest thing of all. It might be things like art. It might be, for me, it's like traveling to music festivals. You can't take away that experience. Again, I keep using the word experience because that is everything. You can drive to work every day, drive home every day, say hello to your family, pet the dog, have your dinner, go home. Or you can live life a little bit more. You can travel, meet different types of people, different backgrounds, different cultures. It's very inexpensive to get on a flight from the US and go to Central America and go to a country where you don't really know much, like Belize. Go meet the people. Go and live in the forest. Go down to the beach. Go diving. Learn how to dive. It doesn't cost you that much. But now you can dive. You can go underwater. That's an amazing thing.
What are some of your daily habits and rituals?
I'm not overly process driven, and it switches depending whether I'm overly stressed or if I'm traveling too much. Generally, I'm a very early riser. Very early for me. It's like kind of 5 a.m. I wake up because that's what finance forced into you. Markets are up early. You get up early, particularly in London, because you need to get the close of Tokyo and Hong Kong, and then you stay for the opening of New York. So I tend to be early. I tend to get up, make coffee or tea, and then check my emails, my charts, and all of that stuff. Have that quiet moment where I can do stuff, catch up on stuff. I might even speak to a couple of people in different time zones without waking my wife up. And then I will then either go for a walk on the beach. I live this house here in Grand Cayman. Beach is just across the road, a bit further down. And I go for a nice long walk there for an hour. Or I did for several years yoga 3 or 4 times a week, which I found amazing. Before that, I was doing more weights, and then I didn't do that for a while. And then I didn't do yoga either. I've gone back, but I did the walking. I haven't got back to my yoga. Started with weights again, and I try and get sun. I think sun is the most powerful thing on Earth. I mean, without sun, we wouldn't have a planet. I mean, there's only the floor that don't need, everything else pretty much does. And so I find if I just get out in the sun for half an hour or an hour on the weekend, it just makes you a whole better person. You sleep better, you feel better, you're in a better mood, you smile more, you think more positively. That's a big hack to me. I'm also generally, I go to bed early. I'm not a brilliant sleeper because I do wake up in the middle of the night. But I try and, we use an 8 sleep to keep it relatively cool. I often use an eye mask as well. I get woken up by full moons. Terrible for it. So eye masks help somewhat of that. Sometimes white noise machine as well to do that. And then I take a whole bunch of supplements and stuff.
What recommendations do you have for young people, college aged, maybe a little bit older, 20s, 30s, looking to get into the digital asset industry?
Yeah, it's the right industry because it's got a secular tailwind, right? It's going like this. So it means they're going to be employing more people, and the people in it are going to get paid more and more and more. It's just hustle. Everybody's new at this industry, so you don't have to be the world expert, but obviously understand some of the industry, have a passion, and just get to meet people. Right? It's magical right now. The digital asset space is actually very small. You can hit me up on Twitter. We will talk. You've spoken to XCopy, right? That's how small this space is. In 10 years' time, there'll be 10 million people working in this industry, and this magic will have gone. This is magic. I get to meet you, who bought the first piece of art, that's something that I've built. You know the artist, I've met the artist, that. So be on Twitter, be useful, talk to people, try and meet them. Try and figure out how to meet them. Don't ask them for anything, give them everything. Give them your help. How can I help you? Or I've got something for you. Don't go there and call them up like I get on LinkedIn, which is like, hey, can you get me a job? Can you do this? No, I don't know you. But hey, listen, I thought of you and I really like what you do, and I've got something for you, that'll stop someone in their tracks. It's just this space. What I love about the crypto space generally is more people are more givers than takers.
Well,
People just want to help each other.
that is the perfect segue, because as I've been prepping for this interview, I've been thinking, you are by and large the most well-known guest who's been willing to come and talk to me, and I'm very appreciative of your time. And so I thought, okay, well, how can I thank him? And I started thinking about it, and I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, that's not what I wanted to share. All right, here we are. So Mira Takuru, he is an artist that I found. He's got like 19,000 followers on Twitter, and I can't tell you much about him because he is Japanese.
Japanese, yeah.
It looks like he was involved in crypto voxels in 2019, and he has a collection called Shari Inscriptions, and I felt like it was your aesthetic. I own 3 of these, and, they're reasonably priced on Magic Eden, but I bought one for you, and I know you're not into ordinals, but I want to.
I'm not into them. I just haven't got to them.
Well, this is going to be perfect for me then, because I'm going to try to get you into them. As soon as you set up your first Ordinals wallet, I am going to send you, and I believe I have it. Yep, this is it.
God, I fucking love that. It's super cool. It's somewhere between ACK and a bit of XCopy and a bit of Neurocolor. It's like, that's right up my street. So how do I set up an Ordinals wallet?
Great question. I would say there's 3 main ones. It's typical of any other.
I wonder if it's in Phantom.
Actually,
As a start,
I don't know if Phantom has gotten into Ordinals yet, but the Magic Eden connects to Phantom.
Magic Eden does. Let me have a look. Hold on, I'm just opening my phone.
You might have to use Unisat or Unisat's the one I use. I think Xverse is another wallet.
Well, we'll figure it offline. We'll figure it out offline. But here's the problem. Here's the initial problem with Ordinals is like, fantastic. How the fuck do I buy them?
Understood.
I can buy a Magic Eden. What do I do with it? Where do I put it?
Yes.
Can it go on my ledger? I don't know.
But I wanted to share a piece of art that I liked, that spoke to me, that I felt like also was kind of up your vibe, and just to say thank you for your time. One last question is, what are 3 book recommendations that you can give? And they don't have to just be in investing or finance. It could be classic literature, self-improvement. What are 3 book recommendations you have for the audience?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. One of the greatest pieces of contemporary literature by Hunter S. Thompson. Really influenced how I write, how I think. Amazing. I don't want to go down all classic literature, so let me go through to Homo Deus by Noah Harari. Yuval Harari, or Harari Yuval. Homo Deus is the follow-on to Sapiens, and it's about us merging with the machines, which I think is one of the most important things for anybody to understand. And then I'm going to give another fiction book just for the hell of it, something that's just a bit weird but incredible. Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell.
Okay. Well,
he writes that Cloud Atlas is like, think of it as like a quantum world where 5 or 6 different things happen. They're all connected, interconnected, but not really clear. And he basically writes, 5, 6 novels at the same time in completely different types of voices. It's just frankly showing off how good a writer he is, but it's just brilliantly done. I don't know how he can do it. It's easy.
Well, Raoul Pal, I want to say thank you again for your time. It means the world to me. And is there anything that I shouldn't have asked you that I didn't?
No, I'm just pleased I got to ask your story, because your story is my story. And your story and my story are part of the mythology of what makes this so special, and how lucky we all are to be here, to be part of this story, and how XCopy is our commonality of thread. And I'm sure he'd be pleased to hear this story too. That's fucking magical.
I
So
couldn't have said it better.
thank you for hitting me up and saying let's talk about this, because this is what makes it matter.
Thank you, Raoul.